And it says that these virus-like entities are attached to the bacterium called Streptococcus sanguinis, and the viroids are tiny loops of RNA, a genetic cousin of DNA, that have been found to infect primarily plants such as potatoes. Viroids differ from larger RNA-based viruses in several ways. First, they're naked, lacking the protective shells that viruses use to hold their genetic material. Second, the RNA doesn't contain instructions to build proteins, whereas viruses carry instructions for their outer shells and call for certain enzymes they need to replicate. Viruses co-opt these enzymes from their hosts. Although viroids were once thought to only infect plants, recent studies suggest they may infect additional hosts, such as animals, fungi, or bacteria. In new studies, researchers searched for possible viroids among the genes of microbes that reside in the human body. They found nearly 30,000 examples of viroids, which have been named Obelisk because the viroid's secondary structure, a 3D shape, they assume by folding onto themselves. It's predicted to look like a thin rod. So once again, these we're talking about motion here, that these 3D shapes fold onto themselves to move into a rod. Using previously published data, the researchers combed through readouts of gene activity in different microbial communities within the body. These gene activity summaries are known as metatranscriptomes, and they use these metatranscriptomes to go back in data they had already stored. And the data they had stored from like decades in the past, they cross-correlated them and found out that these obelisks, they had already had them in their data before. They just didn't know how to search for them. So, and they looked through human feces from the past, which is pretty crazy that they have human fecal matter like on standby from the past to compare this stuff to, but science is pretty cool. And yeah, so we already had like samples of this stuff. We just didn't know how to find them or look for them. What does that make you think of for other stuff? That we already have all this data for it, we just don't know how to look for it through the data. It's a pretty wild concept of how much stuff that we could know, we just don't know how to look for it. And that's kind of an interesting way of looking at the whole space thing too. If you compare the biology aspect to the space aspect, you see that like we have all this information. It's just how you look at it. Your perspective of how you look at it will change the outcome. So that's very, very interesting. Interestingly, some of the newfound obelisks seem to contain instructions for enzymes needed for replication, making them more complex than viroids. They had been described previously since science reported. Like most viroids, though, they still lacked instructions for a protective outer shell. It's still unknown, however, whether these viroids affect human health, although they may help shape the human microbiome, since at least some of these infect bacteria that are within the gut. There's also ongoing discussion on whether these viruses evolved from viroids or if viroids evolved from viruses. So this may help with that, this discovery may help with that debate. So, or fuel the debate. I'm not sure if it'll help settle it, but it will help fuel the debate. With this one, I almost don't even know where to begin. I guess where I will begin is that before I tell you guys anything on this podcast, I like triple check some of this stuff. I will look for especially if it's controversial or like really, really brand new upset that changes everything. I will double check that and triple check that, or at least try my best. And with this one is one of those that I went and did that and found kind of a controversy, kind of like with the solar thing I was talking about earlier, that is actually kind of interesting because it links into this a little bit. So, I guess I'll say that, like I said, I was researching this topic, and I found one article that was like vehemently against this topic and anything related to it. And I can kind of see their point a little bit. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a little bit. And that basically their critique, or one of their critiques, was that this sort of stuff is used to create medical scams and like gadgets and stuff that are gimmicks and not real. And that may be true. I really don't have any expertise for that. That's probably true. And there's a lot of fake medical stuff out there. That's why I have to be really careful. And I try to be really careful. And everybody should be really careful whenever you buy something or hear about a new thing. So, yeah, I found one that was really against it. And then that made me curious because this is like an MD doctor that's making a pro in favor argument. And so I went and looked up what this guy was talking about on other Google Scholar stuff and looked through like a bunch of different articles, like 2 different pages of articles, probably 40 articles or so. And a lot of them were like talking about the science behind this. So I don't understand what's so controversial other than the gimmicky gadgets and like the fakery and quackery. That's definitely not cool. You can't be scamming people on their health. But that doesn't mean that the whole concept is a scam. And I'll just leave it at that, and I'll read it and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Riding waves of rhythm, frequency, and levels of awareness, consciously attuning to internal frequency to detect patterns of synchronicity. In a previous post, Dr. M.D. Bernard D. Beitman, so this is a doctor. So, I mean, it just at least have an open mind to it. It says that rhythms integrate basic human biological responses and govern the way we hear sound. Delta waves reduce internal noise and increase sensitivity to meaningful stimuli. Sound frequency introduces a focused inquiry of meaning detection and synchronicity and scientific innovation. The Earth's natural frequencies are strongly correlated with EEG rhythms of the human brain. In a previous post, we introduced the idea that frequency and synchronicity can be meaningfully connected. The post explores rhythm as an emerging language for the fundamental interconnectedness among synchronicity, awareness, and our physical condition, and frequency. Rhythm where synchronicity meets sonic and science. Rhythm is a symphonic pattern of all life and the basis of biological evolution. You have to like reread that. The basis of biological revolution is rhythm. Frequencies, timbres, and passages of beats through time and space form rhythms, the carrier of life information that governs a variety of neurobiological functions, biochemical interactions, and the way we hear sound with our whole body. The notion of the intimate relationship between sound and neurobiology is echoed in the words of Sufi musician, healer, and mystic Hazrat Ayana Khan. A person does not hear sounds only through their ears. He hears sound through every pore of his body. It permeates the entire being, and according to its particular influence, either slows or quickens the rhythm of blood circulation. It either wakens or soothes the nervous system. It arouses a person to great passions, or it calms him by bringing him peace. According to the sound and its influence, a certain effect is produced. Sound becomes visible in the form of radiance. This shows that the same energy that goes into the form of sound before being visible is absorbed by the physical body, in the way that physical bodies reciprocates and becomes charged with new magnetism. Currently, a highly practiced and popular form of wellness, mindfulness meditation increases the volume of the gray matter in the posterior cingulate cortex, as well as other brain organs. He lists like 4 here, Through long-term practice, meditation reduces internal perceptual noise and increases one's perceptual sensitivity to meaningful stimuli. So your brain gets bigger and you become more sensitive to stimuli. Religious chanting can become a form of mindful meditation through attention to breathing and prayer, which holistically integrates the complex and multifaceted tiers of consciousness and awareness. A form of entertainment, religious chanting can quiet fears, transcend the quotidian mind, and help individuals cope with hardship. A study combined advanced multimodal electrophysiological measurements and neuroimaging to investigate the neural correlates of chanting Amitabha Buddha. It showed increased indigenous neural oscillations in the low-frequency delta band and posterior cingulate cortex. Strong delta waves are also localized in several brain regions during slow-wave sleep and have been proposed to act as inhibitory brain oscillations that prevent sources of distractions from interfering with internally focused concentration. These changes have little to do with implicit language processes in the meditation. They are related to the focused, intentional acts of concentrating and observing and observation through the conscious desire of contemplation, of compassion, as well as group entertainment. So, translation a little bit. What I think it's saying there is that it's not the language processing of like utterance, the part of your brain that processes you speaking. It's the focusing of your mind on compassion, contemplating compassion. Because whenever you're in some forms of meditation, you're like imagining love and compassion as strongly as you can. So he's saying that it's not from the chanting of it, like the physical motion of your muscles and like your brain doing that. It's the sound of it, as well as the love, the actual imagining of the love, the focusing of the feeling of the love. As a result of this reduction in our self-oriented thoughts and suspension of sensory monitoring, religious chanting is an active practice that leads to the self-modulated state of entrained observation of synchronicities. Synchronicity awareness and meaning detection are fostering emerging discussion of the correlation between frequency and meaning. While current tools to assess individual differences in synchronicity contain ambiguity, and sound frequency introduces not only a focused inquiry into meaning detection, but also grounded means for scientific innovation. Researchers from Stanford University have developed a way to hear seizures by converting the brain's electrical signals to sound. By listening to the tone, they can understand the audible difference between a seizing brain and a normal one. Another Stanford study uses acoustics to reorganize the patterns of heart cells. Whoa. Imagine if you could do that with singing. You could sing and fix somebody's heart cells. About 100 million cells fit into the space of a regular sugar cube, indicating that a subtle change in frequency and amplitude guides the cells into new patterns and secures them in place. Acoustics can be used to create forms that resemble natural cardiac tissue and regenerate damaged parts of the heart and other organ tissues and blood vessels. Whoa. Between 1952 and 1954, physicist Winfried Otto Schumann and his successor Herbert Koenig measured a set of frequencies with a mathematical model predicting an Earth ionosphere cavity resonance. The ionosphere is part of the atmosphere, so the Earth-atmosphere resonance. The frequency of the first Schumann resonance is approximately 7.83 hertz, while the others are close to 14, 20, 26, 33, 39, and 45, closely overlapping the human brainwaves. One similarity between the frequencies produced by the brain and the Schumann resonances, the tendency of the EEG rhythms to become synchronous with Schumann resonance activity. The accumulating evidence shows that changes in solar and geomagnetic activity could overlap with physiological rhythms and fields. Nobel Prize winner Luc Montagnier's work claimed that genetic information in DNA can be transmitted into pure water when they are both subjected jointly to an electromagnetic field using Schumann resonance as a mode. Rutger Weaver showed a significant disruption in circadian rhythm and emotional distress in an underground bunker shielded from natural magnetic and electrical fields. After a short exposure to 10 hertz, the health of the volunteers restabilized. Okay, that part just blew my mind for two reasons. I'll start from the first one. When it said electromagnetic fields can affect genetic information and be put into water, I have done some paranormal research in the past, paranormal investigating, you could call it, or whatever. I know that some people are not going to be into this, but just hear me out here. Some of the people that go out into these quote-unquote haunted places use science equipment like electromagnetic detecting, actual science equipment, actual like meters and sensors, and they go out and they get these anomalous electromagnetic activity during periods of what you would call paranormal activity, like stuff being thrown, unexplained voices and stuff like that. And some people think that that's not possible, but I'm telling you, with electromagnetic recorders, you can get voices, and that you will have sensors next to them that will have electromagnetic anomalies going off at the same time. And we're talking about DNA and that you can transmit that into water. That's just like really, really strange. And other people have talked about the electromagnetic frequencies of the universe being related to our brain. That's how our brain works as well. This just interacts in a lot of different strange ways, and I just wanted to throw that out there, that was a thing. And then secondly, the people that were disrupted by circadian rhythm and emotional distress in underground bunkers shielded from natural magnetic electric fields, that they went through emotional distress. That's pretty strange. And it makes me think of a lot of government bunkers and stuff. There's been a lot of theories of that. A lot of them are public. There's hundreds of bunkers around the world. A lot of them are public. Even the ones that are public, just look into those. And what I'm talking about right now will blow your mind. How do those people stay sane? You know, it makes me think of the Cold War, of how much rigorous psychological testing somebody would have to go through to be a weapons control officer in the nuclear Minuteman missile silos, who would be carrying out the retaliation with strategic missiles, like should nuclear holocaust ever happen. The person that turns that key to fire that missile, they're underground for like ever. So how do they stay mentally fit? Do they just replace their circadian rhythm with like the lights inside, you know, like being matched? I know up north where they have extended periods of darkness, they use specialized light bulbs, so maybe they could use the special vitamin D light bulb or whatever, and then have the circadian rhythm match the surface. I don't know. That part blew my mind. And obviously living underground in bunkers is a lot more complicated than one would think. And all the like billionaires and stuff out there that are thinking about that, I wonder if they're thinking about their own mental health being stuck under there. It's very interesting. I know that was like a hard tangent, but it did make me think of that. I mean, they basically called it out, underground bunkers. Like what? And then this is talking about the sun's geomagnetism and the Earth's geomagnetism affecting human health. What did we just talk about at the beginning of this episode? That the sun and Earth's geomagnetism are changing. So the reason that I kind of had to explain a lot of this stuff was because it makes you wonder, are humans going to change with this magnetic change that's occurring? If it really affects our brain, then it could. Maybe it'll be good. That would be excellent for it to be good. NASA demonstrates the slight variations of terrestrial frequencies can be as low as 8 Hz, consistent with the frequency that marks the region between theta and alpha bands. Relevant neurophysiological studies show a confounding relationship between conscious and subconscious experiences in mindful meditation. Theta waves are strong during meditation, prayer, and spiritual awareness. Alpha waves bridge the consciousness to subconsciousness, where sensation, abstract thinking, and self-control become real. So, from what I take in reading that, and I know this is like really sciencey and gibberish, I'm trying to explain it a little bit. Y'all might have to go and re-listen to this and like rewind it, because it's like so compacted with information. But basically, from what I take from that is that terrestrial frequency can be as low as 8 Hz, which is not very high, that's very low, and that marks the region between theta and alpha bands, and that's between the conscious and subconscious. So it's saying that the Earth's magnetism fits in between our brain electromagnetic frequencies. There's like different frequencies that it uses, and the Earth fits in between that and like levels it out and attaches the two, attaches our subconscious to our conscious. That makes me, I was pretty skeptical about this, honestly, if I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, not like super like this isn't possible or that it can't work, but I mean, I was skeptical about how of much of an effect this is and whether or not this is like all really true or not. And I went and checked this out, and I'm interested to hear what other people say with all of this. This could get really freaking deep, but let's finish off this article here because we're almost at the end. We know natural frequency plays a key role in the mechanisms that facilitate attention, memory, and complex thinking, and affects degrees of sensitivity of perception, as many clinical studies have distinguished music therapy. This neurophysiological mechanism that underlines the assumption that people perceive more meaningful coincidences introduces a compelling question. Now that a strong correlation between human physiological rhythms and the Schumann Resonance is distinguished, what steps are we committing to nurture our relationship with oscillating vibrations of the planet's electrical field? This is an MD doctor asking these questions, okay? And this fits into like a million different topics. I'm hesitating to even go into it, but I guess I will just briefly mention that it's been talked about with like people with David Childress, Graham Hancock, several others. The list is long, I'm sure. David Childress had the book Temples of Power, as well as many other people have talked about the ancient people building pyramids and temples on magnetic sites of the earth and using that information and magnetism to encode the location with knowledge for it to be bestowed upon people that come to that sacred location and connect into said energy. So, and I know that's pretty freaking like out there, but if we've talked about power dirt on this podcast, okay, that we can have electricity and magnetism, the electromagnetic stuff going through dirt, and we've known that for 100 years, and we just did it. What if they built their temples on the power dirt, as we've already talked about? I mean, I think we're really on something here, guys. And it also adds into the whole Gaia hypothesis that maybe the Earth has more sentience or knowledge in some capacity that we don't really know about. And that, I mean, think about it. If the magnetic field of the Earth can convey information to us and is the bridge between our subconscious and conscious mind, that's like the movie Avatar. You know, like who knows what information we could get from this if we tune into it. As well, it makes me ask, what are the who? Okay, not to like go back to the whole paranormal investigation thing too hard, but like people ask, where are these voices coming from? These anomalous voices and anomalous energy doesn't fit in with the three laws of physics, that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Like, there's not an explanation for where this energy is coming from. But whose voices are we hearing? If it's electromagnetic, is that the voices of people in the past, their electronic spectrum of the people of the past, or is that somehow like spirit voices of like elementals of the earth, like the electromagnetic voices of I don't know. I'll just leave it at that until we get some more information. I know that some people's eyes are rolling back in their head right now with the whole paranormal stuff, but there is some energy stuff to that, like a scientific energy level spectrum that needs to be explored. But I guess I'll give like the other side to it now, right? That here we have the Schumann Resonance's amazing physics sham medicine. And this is on the Big Think, and it talks about basically how with the planet and geography that the Schumann resonance is real, but that it's not real biologically or physiologically, has no sort of interaction with human beings. That's what this is saying, and that there's like sham medicine. Once again, I talked about, people selling junk and claiming that it's helping them. That's probably what this is talking about. But the whole concept, I don't think is totally bunk. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. But right here we have human quantitative electroencephalographic. That's EEG. What he was just talking about. The previous, the first one, the doctor. That Dr. Bernard Beitman, that's what he was talking about. EEG, Schumann Resonance exhibits real-time coherence of spectral power densities, implications for interactive information processing. Okay, that was a lot of words, but I'm going to read it slowly and think about this last part with what I was talking about of getting information from the magnetic sphere of the Earth. Interactive information processing between the brain and the earth, magnetic sphere. Interactive, that means between the two, one changing the other. That's what it's saying. And this is from 2015. And then I just Googled the words. I mean, this is just simple, right? I mean, once again, the Big Think article said that this is fake. And then you just Google Schumann resonance brain, and you have Schumann resonance signal provides a brain frequency range matching electromagnetic signals, providing synchronization needed for intelligence. And this is National Institute of Health. Providing synchronization needed for intelligence. That the human brain needs the magnetic spectrum of the Earth. What does that mean for space travel? I'm just asking these questions. I don't have all the answers. I'm just throwing it out there. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I'm giving you both sides of it. And we talked about, once again, how the Earth and Sun's magnetic stuff is changing. So who knows how this is going to affect everything. But we're going to start going into the rescues here to end it off. This one is from India Today, and it's from Belgium, technically. 13-year-old becomes first to beat rare brain cancer during drug trial. And a 13-year-old went through a 7-year treatment, and that a very aggressive brain cancer was completely cured of diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. After a 7-year journey, there's no trace of the tumor remaining. According to Dr. Jacques Grill, I'm so sorry for my French. head of the brain tumor program at the Gustave Roussy Cancer Center in Paris. This type of childhood cancer forms in the brainstem. It is very rare and almost always occurs in pediatric population. Brainstem cancer has got to be the worst, especially child brainstem cancer. You can't really get much worse than that. And he lived, though, and is completely ridden of the cancer. Lucas and his family participated in the Biomed trial in France, testing potential new drugs for DIPG. Remarkably, Lucas responded positively to the cancer drug everolimus, which he was randomly assigned, leading to the complete disappearance of the tumor. While 7 other children in the trial survived for only a few years after the diagnosis, Lucas's case became exceptional as his tumor vanished entirely. So that's why this is a miracle, is because even some of the other people who got this didn't have the same response. Dr. Grill suggested that the unique response could be linked to a biological particularity of each child's tumor, which Lucas having extremely rare mutation that made his tumor cells highly sensitive to the drug. So this is kind of a highlight of why it's important for us to look into individualized cancer medicine treatment, because everybody's bodies are different. And we're kicking down the door of proteins and DNA and RNA right now in this podcast and across science. All these different scientists are. So I feel like that's all going to fit into this sort of thing of individualized treatment plans rather than just giving everybody the same prognosis of, here, you're going to get chemo and give us your money and fork it over, and that's it. It can be a lot simpler than that. We talked about curing cancer with a laser, just shredding melanoma with a laser a couple episodes ago. And with this one, we have poor decisions. Cogtrain helps rescue Mount Washington hiker in brutal conditions. An injured hiker who made an innumerous amount of poor decisions was rescued from Mount Washington on Saturday amid a wind chill of 50 degrees below zero after rescuers were carried up the mountain in a special cog railway train. And it has a picture right here. It's kind of funny. Portsmouth had fallen while hiking in the Amonoosuc Ravine on Mount Washington. He called 911 and requested help. He was off the trail in a drainage ravine west of West Side Trail and north of Crawford Path at approximately 4,500 feet in elevation. That's pretty far up there. Calls were made to the conservation officers on the Advanced Search and Rescue Team. Androscoggin Valley Search and Rescue Team and Mountain Rescue Service had started their response. Due to the location, the Cog Railway provided better access than Mount Washington Auto Road. The Cog Railway started a special train with a snowblower on the front to bring them to West Side Trail. By then, the rescued victim made his way, which I'm not naming his name. I mean, it's on here, but I'm not. Poor guy. I mean, he made a bunch of dumb decisions, but the victim made his way to the lakes in the Clouds Hut and was below the building in the emergency shelter, but still needed help. According to Fish and Game, conditions on Mount Washington at this first team started across were sustained winds at 90 miles per hour or more, a wind chill of minus 52 degrees, and an ambient temperature of minus 9. The first group of rescuers were able to meet the victim at Lake's emergency shelter at 6:17 p.m. He was not injured but suffering from hypothermia and was wearing many layers of frozen clothes, including frozen hiking shoes. It took over 3 hours to warm him. The victim had to be stripped of his wet and frozen clothes, and the rescuers brought extra gear. His boots had to be thawed out so that his feet could go back in them with dry wool socks. After being fed and filled with warm liquids, the victim was brought down to Amosac River Trail with assistance. The victim called for rescue after making all of these poor choices and putting himself in a situation that placed 11 other lives in danger in order to save him. Even though the rescuers completed these heroic tasks with humility and passion, there's still never-ending concern as to why inexperienced solo hikers continue to push on. The list of people who have died at the presidential range will stay at 173 for now, thanks to the rescue efforts that saved the victim. And I just gotta say, this made me laugh because he got rescued by a train. Okay? If you're climbing a mountain and you have to be rescued by a train, you done messed up, man. You messed up. You gotta think about your actions and not get rescued by a train before. But it also goes to show that no matter how bad the weather is out there, man, they sent out like a dozen people to help this guy. A dozen people. Went up 5,000 feet nearly in like negative 9-degree, 90 mile an hour wind and rescued this guy. It's it's very heroic, and it's kind of funny, like I said, being rescued by train on a mountain. Try not to get rescued by trains if you're going hiking. Don't go out in negative 9-degree weather with 90-degree mile an hour or 90 mile an hour wind. I can't imagine deciding to go out in that. Like, who in the world? I hope he learned. Yeah, so be sure to let me know what you guys think about this one. This one was pretty out there. I know I added a whole lot of kind of tangential stuff. Just kind of making this one a little bit different, exploring different types of stuff to talk about. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think, though, about the types of stuff that we talked about, because I do not have a full scope on this type of sun physiological thing. That was pretty deep. I feel like the ancient people knew about that sort of stuff, and that's kind of what we're tapping into, I feel like, which I'm really into that. And it makes me wonder what other knowledge we can get from this electromagnetic source. And on a final note, that kind of makes me think of the Akashic records, of this ethereal library knowledge that's accessible if we just knew how to get it, knew how to look at it. Feel free to send me any sort of links or fun stuff that you see if you find any miracle rescues. Those are really tough to find. I spent a lot of time looking for those. So send me any cool stuff you find, guys. Thank you. Be safe out there.